Rest of humanity, welcome, and today I'll tell you about the forbidden continent, Antarctica. In 2016, while satellites were scanning the Earth's surface, they photographed the Swarth Mountains in Antarctica. But amidst all this whiteness, the satellites captured something strange, something that didn't belong there at all. It wasn't a natural mountain with a jagged peak, but rather a nearly perfect geometric shape. A peak with four sharp, equal sides that all end at a single point from this angle in space. The shape was very clearly a pyramid. Of course, the scientific community immediately had a ready explanation, saying that this was a natural mountain peak and that snow and wind over the years had sculpted it into this shape. But this explanation didn't convince many people. Most naturally sculpted peaks have 2 or 3 sides at most. But 4 faces, and with such precise geometry, it's very rare for them to occur naturally. This doubt opened the door to other theories. One theory saying that it wasn't just natural rock, but a pyramid built by an ancient civilization when it was Antarctica is still a green land. And now the snow has revealed only the top of the pyramid. If you put the picture next to the pictures of the Giza pyramids or the Mexican pyramids, you will find a terrifying similarity between them, as if they all came out of the same design book, a book written in a lost era in the history of humanity. Modern technology has revealed other things distributed all over the surface of the frozen continent, in a pristine area in the east of the continent. Satellite images have captured something that resembles a huge gate, a nearly perfect rectangular opening carved into the face of a rocky mountain. Its shape is very geometric, with its straight lines and edges, making it look completely different from any natural formation around it. The darkness inside suggests great depth. Some researchers have estimated its size to allow a full plane to pass through it. Although scientific explanations have tried to say that this could be the result of the movement of ice and the influence of winds, there is a second discovery that made many people not believe this explanation. On an island close to the coast, Satellites A, photo was taken of the entrance to a wide cave at the base of a mountain. But the strange thing was not the cave itself. What led to the cave at the base of the slope were dark horizontal lines running parallel to each other and gradually ascending, exactly like stone stairs leading to the heart of the mountain. Of course, the stair-like shape is very difficult to explain with current geological models, because there is no known natural process that could create such precise shapes. In order to understand how there could have been pyramids, gates, or stairs in this place, we must completely erase the image in our minds of Antarctica. We must forget the frozen white desert and go back in time a lot. Antarctica, but without the snow. Antarctica, more than 100 million years ago, was a warm continent with temperatures ranging from 13 to 21 degrees Celsius, meaning ideal spring weather. These conditions certainly allowed for the existence of an integrated ecosystem. Here, the question that imposes itself is simple and logical. If the continent was this beautiful, is it possible that a civilization was established there before it froze? Official archaeology completely rejects this idea and says that humans appeared on Earth 300,000 years ago at most, while the ice sheet covering Antarctica is estimated to be about 14 million years old. Therefore, there is absolutely no chance that the two met. However, history is full of gaps, and what we know is much less than what we do not know. Is the history we know the complete story? Or are there chapters of the story of our world still buried under this evidence of Antarctica's green past, not just theories? The story began more than a century ago, specifically in 1912 with the expedition of British explorer Robert Scott. Imagine with me the scene. men exhausted from the cold and hunger, 500 meters from the South Pole. Shocking! On Alexander Island and the Antarctic Peninsula, researchers found entire petrified forests. Trees up to 7 meters tall were still standing, surrounded by layers of ancient pollen, leaves, and organic remains of a once-destroyed tropical forest. Subsequent excavations confirmed what these excavations had said. A team from Rice University discovered ancient pollen grains in sediment layers far from the coast of Antarctica. This discovery proved that the region was indeed covered with tundra plants 12 million years ago. But amid all this scientific evidence, a very strange report emerged, a whisper in the geology community. This report moved the story to a completely different place. A team of scientists claimed to have found the remains of a giant building there, next to a river. Double D Glacier was described as a stone building with columns and foundations. They also found coins with symbols of strange animals and an unexplained artifact. But the strangest thing is that the report disappeared quickly and no official body confirmed it. Its mere existence was enough for people to wonder if what was buried under the snow was just a few trees or an entire civilization. If the excavations were a message from the past, then the Piri Reis map was an open window to an impossible world. In 1513 AD, at a time when European maps were still depicting the edges of the world as places inhabited by monsters, the Ottoman admiral Piri Reis, or Piri Reis, drew a map that changed everything. The map was an accurate drawing of the coasts of Africa and South America. But the strange thing about the map was that it was in the southern part of the world, the place where Antarctica is. The map didn't depict just a blank space. It depicted a continent with clear details, with coasts, mountains, and rivers. A continent without any of those. And here's the question that was imposed. How could a 16th century cartographer depict the true shape of the Earth, buried beneath kilometers of ice? The only logical answer was that he wasn't drawing from his own imagination, but rather copying much older maps from history. This idea was picked up by historian Charles Habgood, who argued that the map was not just an ancient document, but evidence of a lost maritime civilization. A civilization capable of navigating by sea at a time when Antarctica was still warm and ice-free. Of course, academic circles rejected this theory, dismissing it as mere fantasy. But centuries later, when we arrived with modern technology, ice-penetrating radar was directed toward Antarctica. Surprisingly, the data returned mapped the continent's surface beneath the ice. Valleys, hills, and rivers were in locations similar to those depicted in Barella's map. Suddenly, even the old paper was no longer just a map. It became damning evidence of history as we know it. Interest in Antarctica wasn't just a passion of explorers or dreamy historians. In the years before World War II, someone else was interested in the continent. In 1938, the whole world held its breath as Nazi Germany prepared to swallow Europe. Adolf Hitler personally approved a secret expedition to Antarctica. Officially, the expedition was economic in nature. Germany needed whale oil for its ghee and soap industries and didn't want to depend on Norway. In December 1938, the ship MS Schwabenland left Hamburg in secret, carrying not only scientists and sailors, but also a mix of naval officers and technicians, along with a representative of the Nazi Party. Their destination was an area that no one had declared as part of Antarctica. When they arrived, reconnaissance planes took off from the ship's deck and surveyed huge areas of the Taine. Frozen land. During the survey, they began shooting aluminum arrows engraved with swastikas, aiming to plant the Reich flag in the heart of the frozen continent. The Germans named this area New Swabia. The expedition mapped more than 600,000 square meters of land, and the mission officially concluded in February 1939, just a few months before the start of the war. And with them, thousands of pictures and data. But after that, most of the data disappeared from the face of the Earth, either lost in the chaos of war or hidden. And then, question that dominated the scene was all of this because of whale oil? And if the answer is no, then what were the Nazis looking for in the last corners of the Earth? When World War II ended and the whole world took its course after years of destruction, there was a general feeling that the nightmare of the Third Reich was over forever. But amidst the ashes of destroyed cities, whispers began to spread among the people. Whispers saying that the idea was still alive and hidden somewhere. At that moment, all eyes began to turn south, towards the continent that the Nazis had visited shortly before the war. The theory says that the real goal of the Nazi mission was not whale oil or anything, but rather the establishment of a final fortress, a secret base buried under kilometers of ice, far from any eyes, waiting for the right moment to reappear. This talk would have remained just useless rumors had it not been for what happened in July 1945, 2 months after Germany's surrender. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a German submarine, the U-530, appeared at a naval base in Argentina. A month later, a second submarine, the U-977, appeared. It also arrived in similar circumstances to the first submarine. The commanders of both submarines surrendered, but when asked where they had been all this time and what they were doing in the South Atlantic, they refused to talk. This led many to believe that they were on a secret mission to deliver high-ranking Nazi leaders or to deliver valuable shipments to a hidden base. Were they really on a final mission? Were they transporting Hitler's lost treasure? Or were they transporting Nazi leaders to the Antarctic fortress? To this day, there is no physical evidence of the existence of this base, neither a tunnel, nor abandoned buildings, nor secret rooms carved into the rock. But in the world of intelligence, the absence of evidence does not mean the absence of a threat. The whispers that began in Europe after the war reached Washington. And there they turned into real concern. If there was even a 1% chance that the Nazis had built a base in Antarctica, the United States would not have left this possibility to chance. That is why in 1946, while the world was still licking its wounds from the war, America surprised everyone and launched the largest military expedition in the history of the South Pole, Operation Highjump. Officially, the operation was a scientific and training mission, but the numbers tell a completely different story. 4,700 soldiers and 13 naval ships. From among them was an aircraft carrier, in addition to dozens of aircraft. Here, we're not talking about a scientific team. We're talking about an entire army headed by Admiral Richard Ebert, the most famous polar explorer in history. The fleet moved south with the officially stated goal of mapping and testing equipment in the bitter cold. But no one believed that America would deploy all this force to draw a map. The most powerful theory is that their true goal was to search for any trace of the alleged Nazi base and destroy it, if it was theirs. Indeed, reconnaissance aircraft surveyed millions of square kilometers of the continent. But suddenly, without any prior warning, and before the official mission's term ended, the entire fleet withdrew. Then America returned, and rumors spread by the returning soldiers said that aircraft were destroyed, lives were lost, and clashes occurred with an unknown enemy. So what terrified the American army and made it flee from an empty continent? Admiral Byrd returned from Operation Highjump a different man. The silence imposed by the Navy on the operation was hiding many questions, but Byrd's actions and hints indicated that there was a big secret. Years after the operation, a leaked document began to appear, said to be his secret diary, which he wrote during his last trip over the pole. If what was written in these diaries was really true, then what happened there was stranger and more dangerous than any Nazi base they thought existed. Byrd recounts that during one of his exploratory flights, his plane entered a strange area. When he entered, all of his plane's equipment malfunctioned and the radio went silent. Suddenly, he found himself flying over a worn green valley in the middle of the talc. He saw mammoth-like animals walking on the ground. Before he could understand what was happening, strange flying objects resembling discs appeared around him, took control of his plane, and forced him to land. There, he met advanced creatures who took him to an underground city he called Agrotha. And these creatures warned him of the path humanity was taking with nuclear weapons and our ability to destroy the Earth itself. Then they returned to the pilot. Of course, these diaries have never been confirmed as authentic. But what makes this story terrifying is what happened after Byrd returned. In a rare interview in Chile in 1947, Admiral Byrd spoke about the importance of Antarctica in the future and warned that America could one day be attacked from the polar regions. Even if we assume that the diaries were fake, what did Byrd see there that made him say that? The diaries attributed to Byrd wrote in them that the creatures he encountered in the hidden valley took him to an underground city called Agrotha, a legendary kingdom said to exist in the interior of the Earth. This idea is closely linked to the hollow Earth theory, which states that our planet is not a flat ball or anything, but rather a multi-layered crust inside. Different lands, cities, and even oceans. Agartha is the largest subterranean kingdom and is described as an older and more advanced civilization than ours. The inhabitants of Agartha, whom people call the Ancients, are said to possess technology that far exceeds anything we know on Earth. This idea has appeared in stories and myths in many cultures around the world, from Shambhala in Tibetan traditions to the underworld cities of the Mayans and Celts. But what links this myth to the modern era and Antarctica is the statement mentioned in Richard Baer's memoirs, in which he writes that they told him that they had been observing surface civilizations for centuries and had seen the wars taking place between us. But they remained silent. What's different now is that humans now have nuclear bombs, which are considered a direct threat to their existence as well. Although the document, as we said, has not been confirmed, many people believed it and said it was the main reason for the sudden withdrawal of the U.S. military from Antarctica after the end of the war. During World War II, strange stories began to spread about flying machines that looked different from any other aircraft. People had seen them before, and witnesses who described them said that they were silent, incredibly fast, and shaped like discs. Of course, at first, everyone said that they were just rumors. But after the war, these sightings began to appear all over the world. And this subject led some researchers to link two things: the appearance of the flying saucers that people are talking about and the secret technology of Nazi Germany. To understand how these two stories are related, we need to go back to the heart of the Third Reich. The Nazi leadership wasn't just a political system. It was a creed built on an obsession with black magic, ancient myths, and occult forces. At the center of this were two specific societies. The Sol Society, which searched for lost occult origins, and the Vril Society, whose members believed in the existence of a cosmic force called the Vril. Pure energy can give those who control it infinite power, but they believed that they could not reach it through science alone. The legends surrounding the society say that its members, especially the priestesses and spiritual mediums who were in the society, performed rituals to communicate with non-human creatures from other worlds, or perhaps from the interior of the earth, in order to learn from them the secrets of the vril power. The theories say that the Nazis actually learned the power of the vril and applied it on the ground in real technology. The result was the emergence of secret weapons and planes that resemble discs and fly without wings. Suddenly, the flying saucers that appeared after World War II were no longer sourced from space or aliens, but rather had a second origin, a German origin. Among all the secret Nazi weapons, there was only one name that made everything before it just children's toys. And that name was Diglock, or the Bell. And this was not just a saucer. The Tailleur was a terrifying mystery. Information about it was described as a device in the shape of a huge bell. When it was turned on, it emitted a deadly glow that killed any living creature around it. The most dangerous thing was that it not only flew, but it could also manipulate time and space itself. The bell was the most dangerous and secret project in the entire Reich. Although there is no physical evidence of this, the idea remained one of the most famous parts of the UFO theory. Suddenly, in 1947, the skies above America were filled with unidentified flying objects. Here, America began a race against time in Operation Paperclip. Not only to gather these German scientists, they were trying to gather any information about the technology that the Germans had developed before the Soviets could. This technology was not created by the Germans alone, but through communication with the creatures that the Vril Society communicated with, far from the animal satellites in the darkness of the depths, in the tales of sailors and scientists who whispered about it. The most famous of them is the legend of the Ninjin is a creature said to appear in the frozen waters around Antarctica. It is described as a huge, white, human-like creature that can reach 30 meters in height, the height of a 10-story building. Some witnesses from Japanese research ships said they saw this strange shape quietly emerging from the water before disappearing again under the waves. Is it just a hallucination due to isolation? Or the cold? Or an undiscovered species of giant sea creatures? Or could it be a remnant of the green world of Antarctica? A creature that was able to adapt to the Ice Age? Of course, the legend of the Ninjin joins an older and more terrifying legend, which is the legend of the Kraken, the legendary sea monster that can drag giant ships underwater. Until recently, the story of the Kraken was just a legend that people told. But in 2016, satellites photographed a huge disturbance in the waters near Deception Island. But at the heart of the disturbance was the shadow of a huge creature dragging giant oars behind it. Many people, when she saw it, and thought it looked like a mythical monster. Amidst all the mysteries we've discussed, one question remains the most important. Why is Antarctica, in particular, the forbidden continent? Why is it the only place on Earth that is negotiated behind a fence of secrecy and international laws? The answer may lie in a specific historical event, the signing of the Antarctic Treaty on December 1st, 1959. At the height of the Cold War, 12 countries met in Washington to sign a treaty that would forever change the future of Antarctica. The 12 countries signed a short document of 14 articles. The document became one of the strangest and most successful diplomatic agreements in modern history, stating that the continent is protected for science and peace only, and prohibiting any military activity or nuclear testing. On the surface, The matter appears very noble, a way to preserve a unique environment for science and peace. But at the time, these countries were on the brink of nuclear war. This timing is what made many doubt the vital purpose of the treaty. What could have happened in Antarctica that made yesterday's enemies today's allies? To this day, entry to all of Antarctica is still tightly monitored by many authorities, and only a small number of scientists are even allowed to work there. Even countries require special approvals. Tourists who want to go can only visit certain coastal areas under close supervision. But the vast heart of the continent remains almost inaccessible. There are areas where flights are completely prohibited, and other areas are closed to protect the environment. Antarctica was an icy prison. The whole world agreed that it should remain closed. Every prison, no matter how strong, has a weak point, and Antarctica's icy prison's weak point is the sun. Over the past century, the Earth has heated up more than before. The ice that guarded the continent's secrets has begun to melt, and glaciers that were as stable as mountains have begun to crack and collapse into the ocean, one after the other. This melting is not just an environmental disaster threatening coastal cities, but a countdown to the greatest discovery in human history. Every meter of ice bedew reveals a meter of land that was hidden for millions of years. And every layer that disappears brings us closer to the things that satellites have seen. Scientists began to ask a question that was impossible in the past. Could Antarctica ever become green again? But that is not the question that concerns us in this episode. The question that concerns us is, what will we find when it becomes green again? Will what we find be just a few trees? Or will the history we know end and a new, older, stranger, and potentially much more dangerous history begin? And with that, we have reached the end of the story. Today's story is different from the stories we usually tell on the channel, so I want you to say your thoughts. In the comments, should we make episodes like this again, or should we stick to episodes that focus on a small story with all its details? I'm waiting for your opinion, and if you have a story you want us to tell, write it in the comments. And the idea that I find a lot of interaction with, I will do it, God willing. Show me the motivation now. Subscribe, like, comment, and all this beautiful work, and share the video with anyone you think will like it. And I'll see you next time with a story that's even more exciting than the one before. Bye!